Before we begin, I need you to do something for me. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been told you're too sensitive when pointing out abuse, or if you've ever doubted your own reality because someone made you question your sanity, hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Because what you're about to witness is proof that karma never forgets an address, and sometimes, the universe delivers justice in ways you never imagined. The morning sun filtered through the plantation shutters of our Kahala estate, casting prison bar shadows across the Italian marble floor. I stood in the kitchen, 28 years old but feeling ancient, watching my father, Marion Nakamura, hold court at the breakfast table like he had every morning for the past 11 years. Marion, his voice cut through the air like a scalpel, never looking up from his Wall Street journal. The Yamamoto merger documents. Did you review them? Yes, father. I found 17 discrepancies in their valuation model. My voice came out measured, controlled exactly how he'd trained me to speak. He finally looked up, his dark eyes scanning me with the same calculating coldness he reserved for hostile takeovers. 17? Catherine found 23. Catherine. My younger sister. The golden child who could do no wrong. She sat across from him, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her coffee cup, a small smirk playing at her lips. Perhaps if Marion spent less time with those meaningless patterns she obsesses over, Catherine said, her voice dripping honey-coated venom, she might actually contribute something valuable to the family business. My patterns. That's what they called my gift, my ability to see connections, sequences, and anomalies that others missed. To them, it was a useless quirk, a sign of my broken mind. They had no idea that 3 years ago, I'd started applying this ability to cryptocurrency trading, turning $500 I'd saved from grocery money into what was now $3.3 million sitting in offshore accounts they knew nothing about. Speaking of contributions, father set down his newspaper with deliberate slowness. The Johnsons are having their charity gala next week at the Royal Hawaiian. You'll attend with Richard Chen. My stomach dropped. Richard Chen, who's been married twice and has a restraining order from his second wife? Richard Chen, whose family controls 40% of the Pacific shipping routes. Father's voice turned to ice. You're 28, Marion. Catherine's already engaged to the Takahashi heir. You're an embarrassment to this family. She's always been an embarrassment, my brother Marcus chimed in from the doorway, still in his gym clothes. At 32, he was father's right hand, groomed since birth to take over the empire. Remember when she told the Wongs their investment algorithm had a fatal flaw? Cost us a $10 million partnership. The algorithm did have a fatal flaw. It collapsed 6 months later, taking half their portfolio with it. But acknowledging I was right would mean admitting I had value, and that was something the Nakamura family would never do. I won't go with Richard Chen, I said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Father stood slowly, his 6-foot frame towering over me despite my own 5'7" height. You will go. You will smile. You will be grateful that anyone would consider damaged goods like you. Each word was a carefully placed wound. Your mother understood her place. It's time you learned yours. My mother. The woman who died when I was 17, crushed under the weight of father's systematic destruction of her spirit. The death certificate said heart failure. I knew better. She'd simply given up fighting. Clean yourself up, father said, straightening his tie. You look pathetic. Marcus, Catherine, the helicopter will be here in 20 minutes for the Maui property inspection. They left me standing there, alone in the kitchen that cost more than most people's homes. This was my life ignored, belittled, diminished. The scapegoat in a narcissistic family structure that would make textbook psychology cases look tame. I walked to my room, the smallest in the house, of course, despite us having 12 bedrooms. The walls were bare except for a single painting my mother had given me before she died, a phoenix rising from ashes. One day, Marion, she'd whispered, you'll break free. Opening my laptop, I checked my hidden accounts. $3,289,000. My pattern recognition had identified a trending anomaly in 3 emerging cryptocurrencies that would peak within the next 2 weeks. By my calculations, I'd have my full $3.3 million target by then. Then I opened another file, one labeled Family Recipes, that was actually anything but. It contained 11 years of documentation, recordings from my phone when father didn't know I was recording, emails where he'd admitted to tax evasion between family, photos of bruises from when his discipline got physical, and Catherine's messages to her friends laughing about how they'd convinced father to cut me out of grandmother's will. The file was 847 pages long. Single-spaced. My phone buzzed. Dr. Sarah Chen, my therapist who I'd been seeing secretly for 2 years, remember what we discussed. Document everything. Your reality is valid, no matter what they tell you. I looked at the mirror. The woman staring back had hollow eyes, sharp cheekbones from stress-induced weight loss, and shoulders that curved inward like she was trying to disappear. But behind those eyes was something they'd never managed to kill, a spark of defiance, carefully hidden, patiently waiting. 11 years. That's how long I'd endured being their emotional punching bag, their scapegoat for every family failure, their example of what not to be. Father's narcissistic abuse had been so subtle, so carefully crafted, that even I had believed I was worthless for the first 5 years. It wasn't until I'd stumbled across a Reddit forum called Raised by Narcissists, a support group with almost 1 million members, that I'd realized I wasn't alone. User after user shared stories that could have been ripped from my own life. The gaslighting, the golden child dynamic, the systematic destruction of self-worth. That's when I'd started planning. The Yamamoto merger documents sat on my desk. I pulled them up on my screen, running my pattern recognition over them one more time. Catherine had found 23 discrepancies? I smiled coldly. She'd missed 47 more. 47 that would cause the entire merger to implode if not corrected, taking approximately $50 million of father's empire with it. I closed the file without saving my corrections. Looking back at my mother's phoenix painting, I whispered, "Soon, Mom. Very soon." 3 weeks before everything changed, I discovered something that would become my nuclear weapon. It was 2 a.m., and I was in my room, doing what I did every night when the house finally went quiet, analyzing patterns. Most people saw numbers as static things, fixed points of data. I saw them as living, breathing entities that danced and swirled, forming connections visible only to me. My gift had manifested when I was 7. Father had been furious when the school called, saying I'd predicted the exact sequence of a random number generator 17 times in a row during a science fair. He'd punished me for showing off and embarrassing the family with weird behavior. That was the first time I learned to hide who I really was. But tonight, I wasn't looking at random numbers. I was looking at Father's empire. Nakamura Holdings consisted of 43 subsidiary companies across the Pacific Rim. Real estate, shipping, technology, healthcare, Father had his fingers in everything. What he didn't know was that I'd been mapping the entire corporate structure for 3 years, tracking every transaction, every merger, every quiet acquisition. And tonight, I'd found it. The pattern that didn't belong. Shell company transfers. 47 of them over the past 8 years, all routing through the Cayman Islands, all eventually circling back to a single account in Switzerland. Father wasn't just evading taxes, he was embezzling from his own shareholders, including several pension funds. $127 million. That's how much he'd stolen. My hands trembled as I documented everything, creating an encrypted file with enough evidence to destroy him completely. But that wasn't even the best part. The best part was the pattern itself. Father's embezzlement followed a predictable sequence, one he'd unconsciously created based on his narcissistic need for control. He moved money every third Thursday, always between 3:17 and 3:23 p.m. Hawaii time, always in amounts that were multiples of $47,000. Why? Because those numbers held significance to him. March 17th was the day he'd forced my mother to marry him, and 47 was his age when he'd first started stealing. Narcissists, I'd learned from my research, often created patterns based on their grandiose self-image. They believed they were too smart to be caught, so they got sloppy. Comfortable. Predictable. My phone vibrated. A notification from my trading algorithm: another $72,000 had been added to my hidden accounts. The pattern I'd identified in the emerging markets was performing even better than expected. At this rate, I'd have $4 million before the month ended. A knock at my door made me slam my laptop shut. "Marion?" Catherine's voice, artificially sweet. "Are you awake?" I stayed silent, but she entered anyway. Even at 1 a.m., she looked perfect: silk pajamas, face full of expensive night creams, not a hair out of place. I know you're awake, she said, perching on my desk chair like a queen granting an audience. I saw your light under the door. What do you want, Catherine? She smiled, that cruel smile I'd seen 1,000 times. Father asked me to check on you. He's concerned about your stability. Especially after that scene at dinner tonight. The scene at dinner, where I'd quietly mentioned that the Henderson deal father was so proud of had a major flaw in the contract language. He'd exploded, calling me incompetent, delusional, attention-seeking. The usual greatest hits. I'm fine. Are you, though? She picked up a photo from my desk, one of Mom and me at Ala Moana Beach Park, taken just months before she died. You know, Father's been talking to Dr. Yamada about having you evaluated. He thinks you might have inherited Mom's issues. Mom's issues. The nervous breakdown Father had driven her to with years of gaslighting and emotional abuse. He's especially concerned about your obsession with patterns, Catherine continued, her voice taking on a mock-sympathetic tone. It's not normal, Marion. This fixation on seeing things that aren't there. Father thinks it might be schizophrenia. I almost laughed. Schizophrenia. The same diagnosis Father had tried to force on Mom when she'd started standing up to him. The diagnosis that had given him the ammunition to control her medical decisions, her finances, her entire life. Get out of my room, Catherine. She stood, smoothing her pajamas. Richard Chen is very interested in meeting you, by the way. Father's already promised him you'll be accommodating. It would be such a shame if you had to be hospitalized before the wedding, wouldn't it? Mental illness can be so unpredictable. The threat was clear. Play along, or be institutionalized. After she left, I sat in the dark, my laptop screen the only light. On it was a message I'd been composing for 3 months, addressed to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the FBI Financial Crimes Division, and the Hawaii Attorney General's office. All it needed was one click to send. But not yet. The timing had to be perfect. I pulled up another file, this one containing recordings from my phone. I'd been secretly recording every interaction with my family for 2 years, ever since discovering Hawaii was a one-party consent state. The recordings painted a clear picture of systematic abuse, financial manipulation, and conspiracy to commit fraud. My favorite was from 6 months ago, when Father had been drunk on sake after closing a major deal. He'd bragged to Marcus about how he'd destroyed a competitor by spreading false rumors about their CEO's mental health. People are sheep, he'd said. Tell them someone's crazy enough times, and they'll believe it. Look what I did to your pathetic mother. That recording alone would destroy his reputation. But I had hundreds more. A soft ping from my computer drew my attention. My cryptocurrency algorithm had identified another pattern, this one in a new blockchain technology that wouldn't hit mainstream markets for another month. I moved $500,000 into position, knowing it would triple within 3 weeks. By my calculations, I'd have $4.2 million by month's end. More than enough to disappear, start fresh, and wage war from a distance. I opened my journal, the one therapist-recommended tool that had kept me sane through everything. Tonight's entry was short. Day 4018 of captivity. Catherine threatened institutionalization tonight. Father's following the same playbook he used on Mom. What he doesn't know, I've been accepted to 3 PhD programs under assumed names, all fully funded by my trading profits. I have safe houses in Singapore, Vancouver, and New York. I have enough evidence to put him in federal prison for 30 years. The phoenix is almost ready to rise. I looked at the Yamamoto merger document still glowing on my second screen. The 47 errors Catherine had missed weren't random, they were deliberate traps placed by the Yamamoto team to test if Nakamura Holdings was doing due diligence. If Father proceeded without catching them, he'd be liable for $200 million in penalties. The merger was set to close in 2 weeks. I smiled in the darkness. 2 weeks. The same day my cryptocurrency positions would mature. The same day I'd planned to disappear. The same day Father's empire would begin its collapse. But I hadn't counted on one thing, the universe had an even better plan in store. The Royal Hawaiian Hotel's ballroom glittered with the kind of ostentatious wealth that made my skin crawl. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across the crowd of Hawaii's elite, each person wearing clothes that cost more than most families' annual income. I stood near the wall in the dress Father had chosen, a conservative black number that he said might hide some of your unfortunate features. Richard Chin circled me like a shark, his breath reeking of whiskey and entitlement. Your father speaks highly of your compliance, he said, his hand finding my lower back despite my attempts to step away. I appreciate a woman who knows her place. Across the room, father held court with a group of investors, Catherine glittering at his side in a $30,000 designer gown. Marcus worked the opposite corner, his wife a former Miss Hawaii whom father had handpicked for him smiling vacantly at his side. This was supposed to be my life. Sold to the highest bidder, my worth measured only in my ability to merge family fortunes and produce heirs. Did you know, Richard continued, leaning closer, that your father's already drawn up the marriage contract? You'll get a generous allowance, of course. $5,000 a month should be more than enough for someone with your modest needs. $5,000 a month. I had $3.7 million in hidden accounts as of this morning, with another spike expected by midnight. Excuse me, I said, trying to move away. I need to use the restroom. His grip on my arm tightened. Your father warned me you might be difficult. He mentioned you have some mental health issues? Don't worry, my family has excellent doctors. We'll make sure you're properly medicated. That's when I saw her. Dr. Sarah Chan, my therapist, across the room with her husband. She caught my eye, saw Richard's grip on my arm, and started moving through the crowd toward us. But father got there first. Richard. Marion. You two seem to be getting along wonderfully. His smile was all teeth, no warmth. Marion, stop being antisocial. Richard's family is considering a substantial investment in our Maui development. Mr. Nakamura, Richard said, his grip still painful on my arm, your daughter and I were just discussing the wedding timeline. I think June would be perfect. June? I heard my own voice, distant and strange. That's in 3 months. More than enough time, father said. Catherine managed to plan her engagement party in 2 weeks. But then, Catherine's always been the capable one. Something inside me snapped. 21 years of being compared to Catherine, found wanting, deemed worthless. 21 years of swallowing poison and being told it was medicine. No. The word came out quiet, but it stopped father mid-sentence. What did you say? I said no. Louder this time. A few nearby guests turned to look. Father's face darkened. Marion, you're making a scene. We'll discuss this at home. We'll discuss it now. I pulled my arm free from Richard's grip. I'm not marrying him. I'm not marrying anyone you choose. I'm done being your scapegoat. The room hadn't gone silent, but our corner of it had. Catherine materialized beside father, her eyes glittering with malicious delight at my public rebellion. She's having an episode, Catherine stage whispered to Richard. It's a mental illness. So sad. She's been getting worse lately. I'm not mentally ill, I said, my voice carrying now. That's just what this family says about anyone who won't play along with their abuse. Father stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only I could hear. You pathetic little nothing. You'll do as you're told, or I'll have you committed. One phone call to Dr. Yamada, and you'll be in a psychiatric hold by morning. Like you did to Mom? The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. The crack echoed through our section of the ballroom, and now everyone was staring. My cheek burned, but I didn't raise my hand to touch it. I just stared at father, watching the mask he wore in public crack and reveal the monster beneath. You hit me, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. In front of all these witnesses, you hit me. You're hysterical, he said, but his voice wavered. Several people had their phones out. Catherine, Marcus, take your sister home. She's clearly unwell. No. Dr. Chin appeared beside me, her presence solid and reassuring. Marion, are you all right? I saw what happened. Do you want me to call the police? This is a family matter, father snarled. Assault is a criminal matter, Dr. Chin replied calmly. She turned to me. Marion, you don't have to go with them. The room was definitely watching now. I could see people whispering, phones recording. The Nakamura family patriarch, pillar of the community, had just struck his daughter at a charity gala. You've destroyed everything, father hissed at me. You're dead to this family. You get nothing. You are nothing. I know about the embezzlement, I said quietly, but in the hushed ballroom, everyone heard it. Father went white. I know about the 47 shell companies. The $127 million stolen from pension funds. I have documentation of everything. She's delusional, Catherine said loudly, desperately. She has these fantasies. I have recordings, I continued, my voice growing stronger. 2 years' worth. Every threat, every admission, every crime. I have the real Yamamoto merger documents, the ones with all 94 discrepancies that will cost you $200 million if you don't correct them by Monday. Marcus stepped forward, his face red with rage. You lying little . Check your email, I said, pulling out my phone. All of you. I hit send on the message I'd prepared 3 months ago. The one with just enough evidence to prove I wasn't bluffing, but not enough to reveal my full hand. The ballroom was silent except for the sound of phones pinging. Father pulled out his phone, his face cycling through rage, disbelief, and then fear as he read. You're finished, I said, backing toward the door. All of you. The FBI will have the full file by morning if anything happens to me. The merger will collapse Monday when Yamamoto realizes you missed the trap clauses. And everyone here just saw who you really are. I turned to Dr. Chen. Thank you for being here. For believing me. She squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, Marion. As I walked out of the ballroom, I heard the explosion of voices behind me. Father roaring my name, Catherine shrieking about family loyalty, Marcus threatening legal action. But louder than all of that was the sound of my own heartbeat, steady and strong. Free. I didn't go home that night. I went to the safe house I'd rented under an assumed name in Kailua, a small beach cottage paid for with cryptocurrency profits. My go bag was already there, passport, cash, laptop, and the drives containing every piece of evidence I'd collected. At exactly midnight, my trading algorithm executed its final sequence. The emerging blockchain technology I'd invested in had just been acquired by a major tech firm. My $500,000 investment was now worth $2.1 million. Total assets, $5.8 million. I sat on the lanai, listening to the ocean, and opened my laptop. The family WhatsApp group was exploding with messages. Father demanding I return immediately. Catherine calling me a traitor. Marcus threatening to hunt me down. I typed a single response, the phoenix rises. Then I blocked them all. The real war was about to begin. The law offices of Steinberg, Kahale and Associates occupied the entire 47th floor of the First Hawaiian Center, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Honolulu Harbor. I sat across from James Steinberg, arguably Hawaii's most ruthless attorney, watching him review the evidence I'd compiled. He'd been reading for 3 hours. Occasionally, his eyebrows would rise, or he'd make a note on his legal pad. Finally, he set down the last document and looked at me over his wire-rimmed glasses. Miss Nakamura, in 30 years of practice, I've never seen documentation this thorough. Your father isn't just facing civil litigation, this is criminal conspiracy, embezzlement, wire fraud, and tax evasion spanning 8 years. I know, I said simply. The recordings alone. He shook his head. Hawaii's one-party consent law means they're all admissible. This conversation where he admits to driving your mother to suicide through systematic psychological abuse that could be prosecuted as involuntary manslaughter. I'd waited 6 months after the gala incident to make this move. 6 months of living quietly in my Kailua cottage, letting my family think I'd simply run away in shame. They'd tried to find me, of course. Marcus had hired private investigators. Catherine had stalked my old social media accounts. Father had frozen every bank account he knew about. But they didn't know about the $5.8 million in cryptocurrency, now converted to diverse holdings across 17 international accounts. They didn't know about the 3 backup servers containing copies of all evidence, stored in different countries. They didn't know I'd spent those 6 months building an even stronger case. Your father's been busy, Steinberg continued. He's telling everyone you had a psychotic break, that you're dangerous and delusional. He's filed paperwork to have you declared mentally incompetent. I smiled. I know. I've been monitoring their communications. How he stopped himself. Actually, I don't want to know. What I didn't tell him was that Catherine's vanity had been her downfall. She'd posted everything on her private Instagram, thinking it was secure. She didn't know that her assistant, Malia, whom the family had treated like dirt for 5 years, had been forwarding me screenshots in exchange for $50,000 and a recommendation letter for law school. "Here's what I propose," Steinberg said, leaning back in his leather chair. "We file simultaneously criminal complaints with the FBI and SEC, civil suits for embezzlement and intentional infliction of emotional distress, and a restraining order against your entire family. We'll also petition to freeze all Nakamura Holdings assets pending investigation. Do it. There's one more thing." He pulled out a newspaper clipping. "Are you aware your sister Catherine is getting married this weekend? To the Takahashi heir?" I knew. The wedding of the century, according to Hawaii Society pages. A $3 million affair at the Four Seasons Maui, with 500 guests including several state senators and federal judges. The timing would be. Steinberg paused, choosing his words carefully, devastating to their reputation if news broke during the festivities. "Friday afternoon," I said. "File everything Friday at 3 p.m. The news will break just as the rehearsal dinner begins." He nodded, making notes. "Your father's managed to keep the Yamamoto merger disaster quiet, but he lost $200 million. My sources say he's leveraged everything for Catherine's wedding and a new development in Kaka'ako. If we freeze his assets now, he'll lose everything." "Everything," Steinberg confirmed. "The house, the business, the properties. All of it will be seized as evidence." I thought about all the times father had called me worthless, a burden, a disappointment. All the times Catherine had stolen credit for my work, sabotaged my relationships, spread rumors about my mental health. All the times Marcus had accidentally destroyed my belongings, deleted my files, told me I should have died instead of Mom. "There's something else," I said, pulling out a flash drive. "Security footage from the house. Father didn't know the system backed up to a cloud server I had access to." Steinberg plugged in the drive. "The first video showed father striking me when I was 15, hard enough to leave bruises, because I'd corrected him during a business dinner. The second showed Catherine planting jewelry in my room then accusing me of theft, leading to another beating. The third." "Jesus Christ," Steinberg muttered. "He threw you down the stairs?" I was 17. Had just been accepted to MIT early admission. He said I was getting too ambitious, forgetting my place. I touched my left shoulder unconsciously. It never healed properly. There were dozens more videos. Years of abuse, carefully catalogued and timestamped. "With your permission," Steinberg said quietly, "I'd like to share these with the district attorney. This isn't just financial crime anymore. This is systematic child abuse, assault, and conspiracy. Do whatever it takes to destroy them." He studied me for a moment. "You know, once we file, there's no going back. Your family will come at you with everything they have." I laughed, surprising him. "Mr. Steinberg, they've been coming at me with everything they have since I was 7 years old. The difference is, now I'm fighting back." That afternoon, I met with FBI Special Agent David Kim at a secure location in downtown Honolulu. He'd been investigating Nakamura Holdings for 2 years but hadn't been able to crack their encrypted communications. "These decryption keys," he said, looking at the codes I'd provided, "how did you get them?" My father thought I was too stupid to understand technology. He had me organize his home office when I was 16. I memorized every password he wrote down. Agent Kim's team had been monitoring the shell companies I'd identified, tracking the money flow. "We've connected your father to a larger network. This goes beyond Hawaii, there's a whole syndicate of business owners running similar schemes across the Pacific Rim." I'm not surprised. Narcissists tend to find each other. "We'll need you to testify." "I'll do whatever it takes." As I left the FBI office, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it to find a message from someone named Rebecca Walsh. "I'm your father's former business partner. He destroyed my company 10 years ago. I heard you're taking him down. I have additional evidence if you're interested." The dominoes were starting to fall. That evening, I sat on my lanai with Dr. Sarah Chen. She'd been my rock through all of this, the one person who'd believed me from the beginning. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Free," I said immediately. "For the first time in my life, I feel free." "And the guilt?" "Because there was guilt. Despite everything, part of me still heard my mother's voice telling me to forgive, to be the bigger person, to maintain family harmony. It was the same voice that had kept her trapped until her heart literally gave out. "The guilt is there," I admitted. But it's quieter than the anger. And much quieter than the need for justice. Justice or revenge? I considered the question. Both. They're not mutually exclusive. Dr. Chen nodded. You know they'll paint you as vindictive. A scorned daughter out for revenge. Let them. I have the truth. And more importantly, I have evidence. My phone lit up with a notification from Malia, Catherine's assistant. It was a screenshot of the family group chat I'd been removed from. Father, the wedding proceeds as planned. Marion is having another episode. Ignore any rumors. Catherine, Daddy, the Takahashis are asking questions about the gala incident. Marcus, I've handled it. Told them Marion's been institutionalized. They bought it. Father, good. This family's reputation will not be destroyed by one defective daughter. I forwarded the screenshot to Steinberg with a note, add defamation to the list of charges. Friday was 2 days away. Catherine's perfect wedding, the event she'd been planning for 2 years, would become the stage for the Nakamura family's very public downfall. I pulled up my laptop and checked my accounts. My pattern recognition algorithm had been busy, my assets had grown to $6.3 million. More than enough to weather any legal storm, to disappear if needed, or to build an entirely new life. But I wasn't going to disappear. Not anymore. I was going to stand in that courtroom, look my father in the eye, and tell the world exactly what he was. I was going to watch his empire crumble, his reputation dissolve, his freedom evaporate. The phoenix wasn't just rising, she was about to set the whole forest ablaze. Friday, 2:47 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time. I sat in my rental car outside the Four Seasons Maui, watching wedding guests arrive in their luxury vehicles. Catherine had chosen a breakfast at Tiffany's theme. All guests were required to wear black and white, with touches of Tiffany blue. The irony wasn't lost on me, a movie about a woman pretending to be something she wasn't, desperately seeking a wealthy man to save her. My phone showed multiple messages from Steinberg, documents filed with FBI, SEC, and Hawaii Attorney General. Press release goes out at 3 p.m. sharp. Are you ready? I typed back, ready. Through my binoculars, I could see the rehearsal dinner setup on the beachfront lawn. Ice sculptures, a champagne tower, what looked like $100,000 in floral arrangements alone. Father stood near the bar, holding court with State Senator Yamada and Judge Patricia Fernandez. Catherine floated between guests in a $50,000 Vera Wang dress, playing the perfect bride-to-be. Marcus filmed everything on his phone, probably for the documentary Catherine had commissioned about her fairy tale romance. They had no idea their fairy tale was about to become a nightmare. 2:58 p.m. My phone rang. Malia, calling from inside the venue. They're about to start the toasts, she whispered. Your father's going first. Perfect. Is the sound system mic'd up? Everything's being recorded for the wedding video. Professional crew, multiple angles. Excellent. Remember, once the news breaks, get yourself clear. You don't want to be associated with what's about to happen. Already have my resignation letter submitted, effective 5 p.m. today. New job starts Monday at the prosecutor's office. I smiled. Malia would make an excellent lawyer. 3 p.m. I watched father tap his champagne glass, calling for attention. 500 guests turned toward him, phones out to capture the moment. He began speaking, his voice carrying across the lawn through the professional sound system. Today, we celebrate the union of two great families, he began, his politician smile gleaming. The Nakamuras and the Takahashis, joining forces too. His phone buzzed. Then another. Then dozens of phones began lighting up throughout the crowd. The first news alert hit at 3:01 p.m. Breaking, FBI raids Nakamura Holdings offices in financial fraud investigation. The second at 3:02. Hawaii business leader Harrison Nakamura accused of $127 million embezzlement scheme. And the third, the one that would destroy them socially, at 3:03. Exclusive, daughter provides evidence of years of abuse by prominent Nakamura family, videos released. I watched through my binoculars as the crowd erupted. Senator Yamada stepped away from father, phone pressed to his ear. Judge Fernandez was reading something on her screen, her face pale. Catherine grabbed Marcus's phone, her perfect makeup cracking as she read. But the best part was father's face. The moment he understood that his empire, built on lies and abuse and manipulation, was collapsing. He looked around wildly, probably searching for someone to blame, someone to punish. Then the police arrived. 3 unmarked SUVs pulled up to the venue. FBI agent Kim stepped out, accompanied by 6 other agents and 4 Hawaii Police Department officers. They walked purposefully through the stunned crowd toward father. I could see Kim speaking, probably reading Miranda rights. Father's face cycled through emotions: rage, disbelief, then something I'd never seen before, fear. They handcuffed him right there, in front of 500 witnesses, in front of the cameras that were still rolling for Catherine's wedding video. Catherine screamed. Actually screamed, like something out of a horror movie. She ran toward father, her designer heels sinking into the grass, but Marcus caught her. He was reading his own phone, his face white as he probably discovered that his assets, tied to the company, were frozen too. The Takahashi family was already leaving. I watched the groom, Catherine's supposedly devoted fiancé, literally run to his car, his parents close behind. The merger between the families was dead before the wedding could even happen. My phone rang. Steinberg. Turn on KHON News. Now. I pulled up the stream on my phone. The anchor was mid-sentence. Leaked videos appear to show years of physical and emotional abuse. We warn you, this footage is disturbing. They played a clip audio only, to protect my identity, of father admitting he'd driven my mother to suicide. Then another of him threatening to have me institutionalized if I didn't marry Richard Chen. Then the security footage of him throwing me down the stairs. The evidence was provided by Marion Nakamura, the eldest daughter, who says she documented years of abuse while secretly building a case against her father's financial crimes. In an exclusive statement, she says, "No one should have to endure what my family put me through. I hope my story encourages other abuse victims to speak out and seek help." I hadn't given that statement. Steinberg was good at his job. Another call came in. Dr. Sarah Chen. Marion, are you watching this? I'm here. At the venue. What? You shouldn't be. I needed to see it. To know it was real. Through the binoculars, I watched the complete destruction of everything father had built. Guests were fleeing like rats from a sinking ship. The catering staff had stopped serving. The wedding photographer was still filming, probably realizing he was capturing something far more valuable than a wedding. Catherine had collapsed on the grass, her perfect dress stained with grass and mud, sobbing hysterically while her bridesmaids stood awkwardly nearby, unsure what to do. Marcus was on his phone, probably calling lawyers, but I knew it was futile. Steinberg had made sure every avenue of escape was blocked. Then I saw something that made my breath catch. A woman, elderly but elegant, walking slowly through the chaos toward Catherine. Grandmother Nakamura. Father's mother, the matriarch who'd always been too afraid to stand up to her son. She knelt beside Catherine, said something I couldn't hear, then looked directly at where I was parked. She couldn't possibly see me from that distance, but somehow, she knew I was there. She nodded once. Acknowledgement. Perhaps even approval. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your mother would be proud. Grandmother. Tears blurred my vision. In all the years of abuse, grandmother had never once defended me. But she'd seen it all. Known it all. And now, finally, she was acknowledging the truth. 4:17 p.m. The news had gone national. #Nakamura scandal was trending on Twitter. Someone had leaked the wedding guest list, and prominent figures were scrambling to distance themselves. The governor had released a statement condemning father and promising a full investigation into any state contracts with Nakamura Holdings. My phone rang again. Richard Chen's number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "You vindictive bitch," he snarled. "You've destroyed everything. The Chens are pulling out of all partnerships with your family." "Good," I said simply. "You think you've won? You're nothing but a crazy, bitter woman who..." I hung up and blocked his number. His opinion meant less than nothing to me. 5:30 p.m. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The wedding venue was nearly empty now. Police tape surrounded certain areas. FBI agents were carrying boxes of evidence from the administrative office where father had been conducting business during the wedding preparations. I saw a figure walking along the beach, away from the venue. Marcus. He looked broken, his shoulders slumped, his perfect image shattered. He stopped, picked up a rock, and threw it into the ocean with all his might. Then another. And another. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered all the times he'd called me worthless, all the times he'd participated in father's abuse, all the times he'd stood by and watched me suffer. The sympathy evaporated. My phone showed multiple missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Probably reporters. Steinberg had warned me this would happen. There was also a voicemail from Catherine. I hesitated, then played it. "You've destroyed us," her voice was raw, hysterical. "Everything we built, our entire lives, gone because you couldn't just accept your place. Mom would be ashamed of you. You're not family anymore. You're nothing. You hear me? Nothing." I deleted it without a second thought. As darkness fell over Maui, I started my car and drove away from the destroyed wedding, the arrested father, the collapsed empire. In my rearview mirror, the Four Seasons grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. The war was won. But the rebuilding was just beginning. 6 months after father's arrest, I sat in a federal courtroom in Honolulu, preparing to testify. The trial had been moved up due to the overwhelming evidence and public pressure. Father sat at the defendant's table, his once powerful presence diminished. His hair had gone completely gray, his expensive suits replaced with a simple gray outfit that hung loose on his shrinking frame. He hadn't looked at me once since I'd entered the courtroom. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Park, approached the witness stand where I sat. "Ms. Nakamura, can you describe the pattern of abuse you documented over the past 11 years? I spoke clearly, my voice carrying through the packed courtroom. My father used classic narcissistic manipulation tactics. Gaslighting, making me question my own reality. Scapegoating, blaming me for all family problems. Financial abuse, controlling money to maintain power. Physical violence when psychological control wasn't enough. The defense will argue that you're motivated by revenge. How do you respond?" I looked directly at father for the first time. His dark eyes met mine, still holding that familiar contempt. For 21 years, I believed I was worthless because that's what my family told me every single day. My mother died believing she was crazy because my father convinced her that her pain wasn't real. Yes, I want justice. But more than that, I want to make sure he never does this to anyone else. The prosecutor presented evidence for 3 hours. Financial records showing the embezzlement. Recordings of father admitting to crimes. The security footage of physical abuse. By the time she was done, several jury members were visibly disturbed. Then came the cross-examination. Father's attorney, Mitchell Brennan, was known for being ruthless. "Ms. Nakamura, isn't it true you were diagnosed with anxiety and depression?" "Yes, as a result of years of abuse." "You've been seeing a therapist for 2 years?" "Yes, to heal from trauma." "You secretly recorded your family without their knowledge?" "I documented abuse and criminal activity, yes." "You planned this takedown for years, didn't you? Carefully, methodically, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy your family?" I straightened in my chair. "Mr. Brennan, I spent years being told I was insane for recognizing abuse. I documented everything because I knew that without evidence, no one would believe me over Harrison Nakamura, pillar of the community. And I was right, wasn't I? Even with video evidence, recordings, and financial proof, you're still trying to paint me as the villain." A murmur went through the courtroom. "No further questions," Brennan said, retreating. The next witness was unexpected, Grandmother Nakamura. At 83, she moved slowly but with dignity. Once seated, she looked at her son with an expression I'd never seen before, disappointment mixed with resignation. "Mrs. Nakamura," the prosecutor began, "you've asked to testify on behalf of the prosecution. Why?" Grandmother's voice was steady. "I failed Marion and her mother. I watched my son become a monster and did nothing to stop it. I let fear keep me silent while he destroyed everyone around him. I can't undo that, but I can finally tell the truth." She testified for an hour, confirming everything I'd said and adding details I hadn't even known. How father had abused his own father until the man had a heart attack. How he'd driven 2 business partners to suicide through systematic destruction of their reputations. How he'd been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder at 25 but had used his money to bury the diagnosis. Catherine and Marcus never showed up to support father. They'd both fled Hawaii, Catherine to Japan with what little money she'd hidden, Marcus to the mainland where he was reportedly working as a bartender under an assumed name. The trial lasted 2 weeks. I testified 3 more times, each session revealing more layers of abuse and fraud. Other victims came forward, former employees, business partners father had destroyed, even Richard Chen's ex-wife, who testified about father encouraging Richard's abusive behavior. During a break, I encountered someone unexpected in the hallway, Mrs. Yamamoto, wife of the CEO father had tried to merge with. "Marion," she said, approaching me carefully. "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" "Those discrepancies you found in our merger documents, they were tests. We suspected your father wasn't doing proper due diligence, that he was so arrogant he'd sign anything we put in front of him. You saved us from partnering with a criminal. He never would have caught them without me," I said. "We know. We also know you're the one who's been catching his mistakes for years, saving his company while he took credit." She handed me a business card. "When this is over, if you're interested, Yamamoto Corporation would like to offer you a position. Your pattern recognition skills are extraordinary." The verdict came on a Thursday afternoon. Guilty on all counts. Embezzlement, guilty. Wire fraud, guilty. Tax evasion, guilty. Money laundering, guilty. Conspiracy, guilty. The judge sentenced father to 35 years in federal prison, along with $127 million in restitution to the victims of his embezzlement. His assets were seized, the house is sold, the business dissolved. As they led father away in handcuffs, he finally spoke to me, his voice carrying across the courtroom. "You're still nothing." I smiled. "I'm $7.2 million worth of nothing, with job offers from 3 Fortune 500 companies and a book deal with Random House. But sure, father. I'm nothing." The courtroom erupted in surprised murmurs. Father's face contorted with rage as he realized I'd thrived while planning his downfall. The guards pulled him away, his shouts echoing down the hallway until they faded into silence. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I'd prepared a statement. Today, justice was served. But this isn't just about one man or one family. This is about the countless victims of narcissistic abuse who are told they're crazy, dramatic, or vindictive for speaking their truth. According to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 74% of abuse victims experience gaslighting. Almost 1 million people are part of online support groups for those raised by narcissistic parents. This verdict is for all of them. You're not crazy. You're not alone. And you deserve justice. That night, I had dinner with Dr. Chen at a small restaurant in Kailua, away from the media circus. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Free," I said. "Truly, completely free." "And your siblings?" I'd received a letter from Catherine the week before, begging for money, claiming I'd destroyed her life. Marcus had sent threatening messages until Steinberg filed a restraining order. They made their choices. They participated in the abuse. They're facing the consequences. No guilt? No. For the first time in my life, no guilt at all. My phone buzzed with a notification. The publisher wanted to move up my book release date to capitalize on the trial publicity. The working title was Pattern Recognition: How I Brought Down a Narcissistic Empire. But the best message came from someone unexpected, a young woman named Amy whose father had been driven to bankruptcy by father's schemes 10 years ago. "Thank you," she wrote. "My dad died thinking he was a failure because of what your father did to him. Today, his name was cleared. You gave us closure we never thought we'd have." I looked out at the ocean, thinking about my mother. She'd died at 47, her spirit broken, her voice silenced. But her daughter had survived. More than survived, thrived. The phoenix had risen indeed. 2 years later. The auditorium at Stanford University was packed beyond capacity. Pattern Recognition in Financial Crimes, A Survivor's Perspective had sold out within hours of announcement. I stood backstage, adjusting the microphone, no longer the hollow-eyed woman who'd fled a toxic family. "Please welcome Dr. Marion Nakamura," the announcer said, and I walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. Yes, doctor. I'd completed my PhD in financial mathematics in record time, my dissertation on pattern recognition and financial fraud becoming required reading at several universities. Turns out, when you're not being constantly torn down, you can achieve remarkable things. 2 years ago, I began, looking out at the sea of faces. I was told I was nothing. Worthless. Mentally unstable. Today, I stand before you as proof that our abusers' opinions of us don't define our reality. The presentation went through my story, but more importantly, it went through the patterns: how to recognize narcissistic abuse, how to document it, how to safely escape it. The audience was riveted. Narcissistic abuse follows predictable patterns, I explained, clicking through slides. Love bombing followed by devaluation. Gaslighting to maintain control. Scapegoating to avoid accountability. Once you recognize these patterns, you can break free from them. During the Q&A, a young woman stood up, visibly trembling. "My father is like yours," she said. "But I don't have millions hidden away. I don't have evidence. How do I escape?" I softened my voice. "I started with $500. The millions came later, but the escape started with recognizing the abuse and deciding I deserved better. There are resources, shelters, support groups, legal aid. You don't need millions. You just need the courage to take the first step." After the talk, my assistant Hannah, I could afford an assistant now, handed me my phone. "You'll want to see this." It was a news alert: Marion Nakamura arrested in Tokyo for investment fraud. The article detailed how Catherine had been running a Ponzi scheme, targeting wealthy Japanese businessmen with promises of connections to Hawaiian real estate. She'd been caught when one of her victims recognized her from the trial coverage. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sadness. Catherine had made her choices. My phone rang. "Steinberg. Marion, thought you should know. Marcus was just arrested in Seattle. Bar fight. Turns out he's been using a fake identity to work at a casino, embezzling from them too. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree." "What about father?" "Still in federal prison. His appeal was denied. He's been placed in solitary after attacking another inmate who mentioned your name." After the call, I drove to my new home in Palo Alto, a modest but beautiful craftsman house, nothing like the ostentatious mansion I'd grown up in. The walls were covered with my own choices: my mother's Phoenix painting, my PhD diploma, photos from my travels to places father had never let me visit. My study held the real treasure: letters from hundreds of abuse survivors who'd found courage in my story. Support group facilitators using my pattern recognition techniques to help victims identify abuse. Prosecutors citing my case in their own fights against financial criminals. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Dr. Sarah Chan and her husband, visiting from Hawaii. "We brought malasadas," she said, holding up a box from Leonard's Bakery. We sat on my back deck, eating Portuguese donuts and watching the sunset. It was peaceful in a way my childhood home had never been. "I have news," I said. The Nakamura Foundation officially launched today. It had taken a year to set up, but I'd allocated $3 million to create a foundation providing legal and financial assistance to abuse survivors. We'd already helped 47 people escape dangerous situations and start new lives. "Your mother would be so proud," Dr. Chin said. "I hope so." My laptop chimed with a video call request. Grandmother Nakamura appeared on screen, calling from her apartment in Honolulu. After father's conviction, she'd sold everything and moved into a modest senior living community, donating most of her wealth to domestic violence charities. "Marion, dear, I wanted to congratulate you on the Stanford talk. I watched the live stream." "Thank you, grandmother. I also wanted to tell you. I've been seeing a therapist. Working through my own complicity in enabling your father. I should have protected you and your mother. I failed you both. You testified against him. That took courage. Too little, too late. But I'm trying to do better. I've been speaking at senior centers about recognizing abuse, helping other grandparents identify when their grandchildren might be suffering." After we ended the call, I sat alone on my deck, processing everything. In 2 years, I'd gone from being the family scapegoat to a published author. My book had hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. A PhD holder from Stanford. A consultant for the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. A speaker who'd presented at 30 universities. A foundation founder helping abuse survivors. Most importantly, a survivor who'd reclaimed her narrative. My phone buzzed with a notification from the prison email system. Father had sent a message through the monitored system. "You destroyed everything. When I get out, you'll pay for what you've done. I forwarded it to Steinberg and the FBI, adding another piece of evidence to the restraining order file. Then I blocked the prison email system entirely. Father could rage into the void. I had better things to do with my time. That evening, I attended a support group meeting in San Francisco, not as a victim, but as a mentor. The room was full of people at various stages of their journey, from those still trapped in abuse to those years into recovery. The thing about narcissistic abuse, I told the group, is that it rewires your brain to accept cruelty as normal. Recovery isn't just about escaping the abuser, it's about reclaiming your right to exist without apology. A man in his 50s raised his hand. But what if you can't completely cut them off? What if there are kids involved? Then you document everything. You set ironclad boundaries. You never meet alone. You communicate only in writing. And you remember that protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. After the meeting, several attendees approached me privately. One woman, barely 20, showed me bruises hidden under makeup. Another man, successful looking in his business suit, admitted his wife had been gaslighting him for 15 years. Each story was unique, yet the patterns were identical. This was why I'd made my story public. Not for revenge, though justice had been sweet. But for them, the silent sufferers who needed to know they weren't alone, weren't crazy, weren't worthless. As I drove home that night, my phone rang with an unknown Hawaiian number. I almost didn't answer, then curiosity won. Marion? This is Malia. Malia Torres, formerly Catherine's assistant? Malia. How are you? I'm actually calling with a professional question. I'm now a prosecutor with the state of Hawaii, specializing in financial crimes and domestic abuse cases. We have a case remarkably similar to yours, a prominent family, financial fraud, systematic abuse. Would you be willing to consult? Send me the files. I'll review them tonight. This was my life now. Using the pain of my past to prevent future suffering. Taking the patterns I'd been forced to recognize for survival and teaching others to see them too. I thought about Father in his prison cell, still convinced he was the victim, still unable to see how his narcissism had destroyed everything he'd claimed to value. He'd wanted a legacy of power and wealth. Instead, his legacy was a cautionary tale, his name synonymous with abuse and fraud. Catherine and Marcus, following in his footsteps, had learned nothing from his downfall. They'd inherited his narcissism but not his cunning, doomed to repeat his mistakes without his temporary success. And me? The scapegoat, the worthless one, the family embarrassment? I'd inherited my mother's strength, though it had taken me years to find it. Her phoenix painting hung in my office now, a daily reminder that sometimes destruction is necessary for rebirth. My phone showed one last message for the day, from a username I recognized from the Raised by Narcissists subreddit. Your story saved my life. I left today. I'm free. I smiled, remembering my own escape day, the terror and exhilaration of finally choosing myself over my abuser's comfort. You're free, I typed back. And you always deserve to be. CNN special report, the Nakamura case, 5 years later. Anderson Cooper faced the camera, his expression serious. 5 years ago, the arrest of Hawaiian business mogul Harrison Nakamura at his daughter's wedding shocked the nation. Tonight, we look at where the key players are now and the lasting impact of this landmark case. The screen shifted to footage of that infamous wedding, the FBI leading Father away in handcuffs while guests fled in panic. Harrison Nakamura, now 73, remains in federal prison, serving year 5 of his 35-year sentence. His appeals have been exhausted, his assets liquidated. Prison records show he's been in solitary confinement for the past 2 years after multiple violent incidents. A recent photo appeared, Father, aged beyond his years, his once commanding presence reduced to a hollow-eyed stranger. His daughter Catherine Nakamura is currently serving a 7-year sentence in a Japanese prison for fraud. His son Marcus died last year in a drunk driving accident in Portland, Oregon, where he'd been living under an assumed name. The scene shifted to a modern office building in San Francisco. But the real story is Marion Nakamura, now Dr. Marion Nakamura-chan, the daughter who brought down an empire. I appeared on screen, sitting in my office at the Nakamura Foundation headquarters. I'd legally added Chen to my name after marrying Dr. James Chen, no relation to Richard Chen, a fellow abuse survivor I'd met at a conference 3 years ago. He understood the nightmares, the triggers, the long journey to healing. Dr. Nakamura Anderson Cooper said, your foundation has helped over 3,000 abuse survivors escape dangerous situations. Your software company, Pattern Solutions, has helped the FBI solve dozens of financial crime cases. You've testified before Congress about narcissistic abuse. How does it feel to have turned your trauma into such a force for good? I looked directly at the camera, no longer the scared woman who'd fled that charity gala 5 years ago. Every survivor has a choice, I said. Let the abuse define you, or let it refine you. I chose refinement. But more importantly, I chose to make sure others don't have to suffer in silence like my mother did, like I did for so many years. Your father still maintains his innocence, claims you fabricated everything. I laughed, actually laughed. Narcissists never change. They're incapable of accepting responsibility. My father will die in prison still believing he's the victim. That's not my burden to carry anymore. Any regrets? Just one. I wish I'd spoken up sooner. My mother might still be alive if I'd been brave enough to expose him earlier. The interview continued, but my mind drifted to this morning's triumph. The Pattern Solutions algorithm had just identified a massive Medicare fraud scheme, potentially saving taxpayers $400 million. The FBI had called it groundbreaking. My company was now worth $47 million, a number I'd chosen deliberately when we went public. Father's favorite number, now representing his destruction. After the interview, I drove to Mountain View Cemetery, to a grave I visited every month. The headstone read, Marion Nakamura, beloved mother, finally free. I placed fresh orchids, her favorite, on the grave. We did it, Mom, I whispered. We're both free now. My phone buzzed with a text from James, my husband, watching CNN. You were brilliant. Also, ultrasound confirmed it's a girl. A girl. My daughter, who would grow up knowing her worth, her voice valued, her opinions respected. She would never know the crushing weight of narcissistic abuse, never question her reality, never be told she was nothing. I touched my still flat stomach, thinking about the future. Someday, I'd tell her our story, not to burden her with past trauma, but to teach her the importance of recognizing patterns, setting boundaries, and never accepting abuse as love. Another text, this one from Grandmother Nakamura, watching from hospice. So proud. Named the baby Lillian? Grandmother was 91 now, her body failing but her mind sharp. She'd spent her final years trying to atone, speaking out about enabling abuse, donating everything to charity. It didn't erase the past, but it was something. Maybe, I texted back. Lillian Phoenix Nakamura. The phoenix rising, once again. As I stood to leave the cemetery, a young woman approached hesitantly. Excuse me, are you Marion Nakamura? I tensed, then relaxed. Her eyes were kind, hopeful. I am. I just wanted to say thank you. I left my narcissistic family 6 months ago after reading your book. I'm in therapy now, rebuilding. You saved my life. We talked for a few minutes. Her story was heartbreakingly familiar, gaslighting, scapegoating, financial abuse. But she'd escaped. She'd chosen herself. After she left, I stood looking out over the San Francisco Bay, thinking about patterns. The pattern of abuse that had defined my childhood. The patterns in data that had made me wealthy. The patterns of healing I now taught others to recognize. But mostly, I thought about breaking patterns. My daughter would never know the pattern of narcissistic abuse. That generational curse would die with my father in his prison cell. My phone rang. FBI Special Agent Kim, now a close friend. Marion, we just arrested someone using the algorithm you developed. Massive healthcare fraud ring. You've saved the government another fortune. Send me the data. I'll see what other patterns I can find. This was my life now. Using my gift, the same gift my family had mocked and dismissed, to help others, catch criminals, and build something beautiful from the ashes of trauma. That evening, at home with James, we watched the CNN special together. When it showed father being arrested at Catherine's wedding, James squeezed my hand. Any regrets about going public? Never. My shame was never mine to carry. It was theirs. The special ended with statistics. Following the Nakamura case, reports of financial fraud by family members had increased 340%. Prosecutions for narcissistic abuse had tripled. The Nakamura Foundation had helped thousands escape abuse. Your legacy, James said softly. Our legacy, I corrected, touching my stomach. That night, I dreamed of my mother for the first time in months. But instead of the broken woman I remembered from the end, she was young, vibrant, free. She was holding a baby, my daughter, and they were both laughing. "Thank you," she said in the dream. "For both of us." I woke with tears on my face, but for once, they weren't from pain. They were from gratitude. Gratitude for surviving, for thriving, for turning poison into medicine. My phone showed a notification from the prison system, another email from father. Without reading it, I deleted it and blocked the address again. Some patterns were meant to be broken. Outside, dawn was breaking over the Bay Area, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. A new day. A new life. A future unlimited by the narcissistic abuse that had once defined me. The phoenix had risen. And she soared higher than her abusers ever could have imagined.